every new wave, first the tools extend our workflow, then they change our workflow. And so you see it in AI tools. First, the tools extend our workflow. So basically, first AI dev tools were like fancy autocomplete. And then you're seeing the new wave is completely changing the workflow. So Devin was the first time that I saw a tool that changed the workflow, where instead of an engineer doing every task, an engineer delegates every task. And you can imagine a future where every single engineer has like 1,000 Devins reporting to them. But the problem is that like, it's not enough to do the work. Then there's iteration and incorporation, and there's a lot of feedback cycles. Like if you imagine being an engineer and having 1,000 junior engineers reporting to you, you're going to be spending a lot of time communicating with them. And so one thing that I think will change like concretely is right now, like for our product, every single jam is created by a human and sent to a human, trying to show like, hey, this needs to be fixed in this way. I think that in the future, a lot of jams are going to be created by engineers communicating to AIs, just trying to in one shot clearly show what needs to be changed. I think that's sort of where this will unfold. We're going to be spending a lot more time thinking about human to agent collaboration, human to agent like bandwidth of communication.
I think the framing you laid out is exactly right. Sort of like step one has been AI as co-pilot, sort of like a, help me write this code or help me write this text. And then step two is AI as agent.
Yes.
This idea is sitting right there, but somehow it's not yet fully unlocked, right? There are a lot of companies working on it. There are a lot of venture money going into this idea. There's sort of like a sense that it's there, but it's not activated yet. Do you have a sense of what it might take to activate it?
It used to be 15 years ago, if software like wasn't that good at something, it was kind of okay. It was cool that it just existed. You would try to use it. You would sort of jump through hoops to use it. But in today's world where your whole life is running on software, like our whole company runs on software. Our headquarters is a Slack channel. All the work that we do is software based. Like I don't have any printed papers. Things just have to work because every single person in our company is staking their professional reputation, their social capital in the company. Like tools at work just have to work 100% of the time. And so the quality bar is quite high for you to actually adopt and use an agent. And so if you imagine there's like best in class AI agent right now that gets it right 75% of the time, that actually is not yet good enough for you to use because you have to review its work every time. And so it's giving you more cognitive overhead and it's actually giving you more work to do. It'd be faster for you to do it itself. And so there's going to be an inflection point where it reaches like, okay, 99% of the time it's good enough. And then suddenly the world will transform.
Basically, it's about trust, right? Copilot is, you add that trust step manually, and agent, / autonomous / or like coworker, let's say, Copilot versus coworker, requires a whole lot more trust, and we're just not quite there. And I think you're right. It's a little bit about quality. It might be about some other things too that could unlock that quality. But it does seem like that is right on the doorstep. And one of the things that we talk about a lot at USV is what we were talking about a minute ago, which is the potential for sort of exponential progress as that happens, which is really hard to wrap your head around. If all this happens, all the sand, not only do we remove the sand in the gears, that's there today because it's annoying to plug things together and communication channels aren't wired up just right, but then we add every engineer has 1,000 engineers working for them. Every designer can make 1,000 iterations. Every piece of everything is times 1,000, and then that 1,000 is times 1,000, and it's times 1,000. I don't even know what to think about what that means for what things look like, and maybe even for how much change like we're able to handle as a species, because I think there may be some sort of limiting factor there also.
I think you're right. I think the biggest rate limiter is how quickly we're willing and able to change our behaviors. And so it's good to have a rate limiter. Like tradition is I think an important counterweight to what's technologically possible. One thing that I'm really excited about is, so if you look at like what the internet did to media, the internet made distribution extremely cheap. And suddenly we had a Cambrian explosion of media outlets, where in the past it was just like there were a handful, they were very centralized, they were major. And now it's like everyone has a Substack. These Substacks are profitable to have because distribution cost is like near zero. And so it's suddenly profitable to run your own media company. And that's been so cool. Now there's this like, there's a media company for every single niche. Like I'm really interested in product growth and so are, 2 million other people who read Lenny's Substack or whatever. I think that is about to happen with software. So up until this point, it's been too expensive to build niche software and to maintain niche software. But the cost of production is about to go to not zero, but it's about to decrease a lot. And so suddenly it will become profitable to build niche software. And so one of the things that I'm really excited about in like progress, it's not all like progress of the same thing at the same time, but it's all there's going to be progress in a lot of spaces and a lot of niches that don't get attention today.
You could imagine applications that sort of spawn in response to how you're using them, and in many different directions. We've made an investment recently in a company that is trying to explore this idea, and we haven't announced it yet, so I won't say the name of it. But one of the ideas is sort of an adaptive UI. So we're used to sort of static UIs where we have an app with a button in the same place, and that's because it's hard to build things, and also it's hard to learn things. But you could also imagine not only software getting and apps getting developed at the speed of media, but also kind of UIs and the software interface itself changing and adapting contextually, for different purposes, for different people at different moments in time. Like essentially imagining just a really different kind of software experience than we're used to, a little bit akin to 5 years ago or 20 years ago, everybody's reading the New York Times and watching ABC News. And now it's, this fragmented, media landscape that you're talking about. I could totally see that happening with software and software applications.
100%. I think that this is 20 years out, not 5 years out. But one of the things that is kind of bonkers to me is in today's world, it requires a full company to build any piece of software. Like Yelp exists because 400 people really need it, worked super hard to make it exist. In the future, you could imagine you ask, Siri V5, what restaurant should I go to? And it just, a UI is generated for you. And there has to be some sort of data lake where that information is pulled from. But the UI itself doesn't necessarily need a company to maintain. And that's very interesting. I'm really excited about that. It feels very futuristic.
Yeah, we're seeing it though. We're seeing versions of that already. I think today there are certain categories where it's very inexpensive to make an app. And I think the two areas where we're seeing it are on top of blockchain and crypto infrastructure and on top of AI infrastructure. And the way I've been thinking about both of those things is as we externalize more of the infrastructure, either through open source models or hosted models on the AI side, or through blockchains where you've got, transactions, sort of data, reconciliation of data, and the thing you just mentioned, which is some sort of data lake, right? So if you can have sort of compute like a brain, like AI, data like a data lake, and sort of addresses and payments and publicly verifiable computations all as external resources, then the surface area for building at least certain kinds of apps, I think, has the potential to be very, very thin. And I think the future you're painting is maybe 20 years away, but already today it feels like today it feels like it felt in 2006, 2007, when it was oh wow, we have this whole internet JavaScript app stack, and a team of two can just go build an app. We're seeing that today in AI land and in crypto land, and I think that's going to keep happening.
We're what is blockchain but a shared database? And aren't those the pieces you need for an autonomous agent to be able to go out and piece together apps on the fly?
Right. And the piece that doesn't exist yet, but I think is really, really important, and one that we're looking for, is what is that data lake? That it may be the blockchain itself or something like it, or it may be something kind of adjacent. But if you can keep externalizing those pieces, then there's sort of a runtime, for an application runtime that is shared, where the applications can be thinner on top of this bigger open stack. Which I think means that more people, more apps will get made more, faster. And that will either look like, polishing a stone to make the most polished, perfect app, or it will mean, millions of things that we can't even imagine, or both.
You can also see that this is already happening in small ways. So I was an intern at BuzzFeed 10 years ago, and already 10 years ago, they had a program that would try out lots of different headlines and images for each article, figure out what performed the best, and then keep that one. And of course, a human had to write all the different variations. But that's okay. But that's it rhymes with where we think the future is going. Or I remember seeing while at Cloudflare, there was a company that built a Cloudflare app for the App Store that would optimize your ad placements on your website by just trying different things and then optimizing for some usage versus revenue formula. And so we've been trying to do this for so long. It's so obvious that we'll keep trying and the tools for it will get better and better.